Welcome to another day of Bhagavad Gita Sadhana. It is so wonderful to have you as we continue to explore one of the key texts of the world for many reasons, including for me and for many other Westerners like me. It's a key text of yoga. It's a little rainy here today, so you may see me adjusting the computer a bit to try to keep it safe from the rain. Today, I'd like to dedicate the practice to Allie, happy birthday, to all the Paralympians in the Paris Games, and to Vera, speedy recovery. And actually, I'm also going to dedicate it kind of anonymously to a wonderful group of students who has helped me so much this week, especially with the topic we're covering today. So usually I'd go more in depth about stuff in the Bhagavad Gita. But I realized, hello, Millipede. Oh, it's so cute. That we may not be on the same page of understanding. And that is one of the key things that an instructor of any discipline needs to make sure is that whoever is leading the session or facilitating it and whoever is joining are kind of on the same page about certain key concepts that we build upon. So here I've been talking about, the Bhagavad Gita is about yoga, all these different kinds of yoga. We're doing yoga. This is a yoga practice. And I realized I am nowhere on the same page, definition-wise, with regard to the term yoga as many of you. So we're going to, for the next 3 days, or for today and the next 2 days, really talk about what is yoga. So this week, as I was interacting with a wonderful group of students who have been doing yoga for years, I asked, who has a regular yoga practice? And nobody admitted to that. And one of the students said, I didn't get to do my yoga today, but I did mantra. And I was like, wow, learning moment for me. And I said, you realize mantra yoga is yoga. And through this discussion, which I'm very grateful for, it evolved that still, even after years, many students of yoga in the West identify yoga with asana, with poses, with postures, and feel that if they're not doing a posture, or if they can't do a posture correctly, or if they get to a point where their body doesn't want to do certain postures or doesn't want postures at all for a day, then they're not doing yoga, when they're not doing yoga right. So I'd like to clarify a couple of things. One is that primarily in yoga texts, classic yoga texts from centuries or millennia ago, asana poses are barely mentioned. In Bhagavad Gita, a pose, the best of my recollection, is really only mentioned in chapter 6 as a prelude for meditation in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. There's no specific poses listed, and poses are given as a prerequisite to meditation. But actually, meditation is more yoga, which is fascinating too, because I've heard yoga teachers say, if you want to learn meditation, you have to study some other tradition because yoga doesn't have meditations in it. There's a whole book called the Vijnan Bhairav Tantra for those of you who are yoga teachers. I don't know about teaching this to class, but it's just a bunch of meditative practices, basically. So there are many other texts about yoga that really don't mention postures. There is one, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the light on sun moon yoga. And that does talk a bit about it has more about postures, but in conjunction with other practices like mudra, even yama and niyama, the codes of life that you can observe just in your daily activities. And in that, according to my understanding, asana is used to establish the physical, energetic, mental, and emotional health needed to progress to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, to Bhagavad Gita, and all that. So if you think, I tune in, but I can't do the pose, so I watch you do the pose, and I'm just doing the contemplation, you're doing yoga. In fact, just listening, learning, being in community is actually considered a key part of yoga. Watching this daily, you are doing yoga. The yamas and niyamas, if you're not familiar, are just guidelines like nonviolence, which is talked about extensively in the Bhagavad Gita, that you are meant to take off the mat. Now, yamas and niyamas are actually said to be the first practice of yoga. Like before you do asana, you do yamas and niyamas. For example, why? Well, if you came into a yoga class and I said, first, this whole class we're going to talk about being nonviolent, you're probably like, okay, I'm out the door, right? But it's important to subscribe to something like nonviolence, because otherwise you can really hurt yourself doing yoga. You can, if you do a headstand and you're not ready, if you do a pose or even a meditation or even a breathing practice that's contraindicated for high blood pressure, and you have unmedicated, regulated high blood pressure, you can really harm yourself. So that's part of the idea, is learning to love, value, to be truthful with yourself. What can I and can't I do? And taking care of yourself. So I just want to reassure all of you that may feel like, I'm not doing yoga, I'm not doing enough yoga. If you're doing even a little bit of yoga, if you're doing one om a day, if you're watching this, if you're reading books about yoga, that's jnana yoga, that's a form of yoga. Even if, in your daily life, you're simply trying to get along better with other people, that's yoga. And we need to recognize that and give ourselves credit. Actually, this is part of Bhagavad Gita, is Arjuna is saying, I'm basically a loser, dude. And Krishna is saying, give yourself some credit. You know more than you think. You're doing more than you think. You have a bountiful well of wisdom you just need to tap into. That's yoga. Learning to trust yourself and trust that the world around you will give you the experiences you need to keep evolving. As humans, we see that we stop growing physically, so we think our growth stops. Or we stop going to school, so our mental growth stops. That's not true. Yoga is meant to help you grow throughout your life, however you pursue it. So we will do a pose, but if you're feeling like, I can't do the pose, envision it, lie down, or even just contemplate how you're not doing the pose, and that's nonviolence to yourself, and you are doing yoga. We'll do the pose and then the contemplation. Switch sides. Great. Coming back for a contemplation and a time of being mindful. And actually, that's another part of yoga is simply being present, mindful with whatever is going on, being aware. So, for the next 5 minutes, I invite you to contemplate your idea of what yoga is. And can you realize, perhaps beyond the video, beyond the mat, how yoga is playing a part in your life? 5 minutes. Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep. Come on back. If you saw me sneaking a peek at my clock, I didn't have the ding ding turned on, so thank goodness for my internal timer. How was that for you? Did you make any realizations about yoga in your life? I would love to hear, especially from yoga teachers, because one thing I often hear from yoga teachers is I don't spend enough time on my own practice, and there can be guilt about that. Yes, yoga teachers can feel guilt. So, for anybody who considers themselves any level of yoga practitioner, if you had insights into how you really practice yoga in your life, feel free to comment, email, or text. Just being in connection is yoga. And over the next 2 days, we'll talk about 2 other concepts, including tomorrow is the definition of yoga, that I think will really help the rest of the series fall into place for you. So, until then.